The following episode contains or may contain spoilers. So if you're spoiler sensitive, maybe beware.
Yeah, you sensitive people.
Get out.
No, get in. All right, welcome to the Fandom Zone, 3 Fans, 1 Podcast, and SCF Comics. I'm Noah.
I'm Kayla.
And I'm Jared.
Yay, and today we're talking about Wonder Woman. I'm so excited.
The biggest deep dive ever.
I think Thor might still have that, only because that one was like 3 hours long.
I just feel like there's so many different dimensions to covering Wonder Woman that it makes it feel heavier.
It does feel pretty heavy.
And it's because our Thor, when you were like, Jared, we can never talk about anything for 3 hours anymore. I was like, fine.
I forgot how long that was.
Mm-hmm.
It was ridiculous. And then like the editing took like, I'm not even kidding, like 4.5 hours.
It's the only one we had to do like a second and third take on.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, we normally get it right the first time because we're perfect, but...
Yeah, not that one. But, I mean, we like to do deep dives whenever a movie is coming out. And now that it's coming out on Christmas, now we can release this deep dive because, yay, waited over 8 months to do it. Mm-hmm. Before we get into it, we did want to give a friendly reminder that on our Patreon, we have our exclusive Untopicked and Top 5 episodes.
Be patrons and patronize us. Support the show.
And pick episodes and pick what we talk about, because half the time we don't know.
That's true. We literally have a big jar and just pull out random names and we're like, I don't know who this is, but let's do it.
Wonder Woman. I guess we can deep dive that character.
Blah.
Never even heard of her.
All right, so let's get down to who Wonder Woman is. That's not her actual name. Did you know that?
No, what? You're gonna
I knew
tell me.
All right.
Can anybody do the voice? Or sorry, not the voice, the song? How does the song go?
Wonder Woman!
No, there's like, you know, Superman versus Batman. They play the song right when she jumps down and fights Doomsday.
Yeah.
How's it go?
She has the best song.
It's
Hell yeah. Yes, that's it. Okay, cool.
I'm not a singer, so I apologize. I don't know why you
because
made
I
me
was
do
not
that.
singing.
All right, so Wonder Woman also goes by the name of Princess Diana of Themyscira, or Diana Prince. So just to go over her basic, powers, abilities, and weird things that she can do, the best way to categorize what her powers are, instead of saying she's super strong and super quick, she pretty much has basic divine empowerment.
I like how you phrase that, yeah.
Just think of the gods. She can do that. So she has the stamina. She has the strength. She has the super speed. Her reflexes are they have to be fast to block bullets, like machine gun fire with her bracers. Mm-hmm. Of course, she has to be super fast. Her durability has gone up and down in her history. So a lot of people are like, she's not as strong as Superman, but she can fight Superman. She can fight Doomsday. Sometimes she can't. So depending on what era you're reading her in, her strength might go a little up and down. Or
that's just comics. Yeah,
exactly. So this is a thing that I've always been confused with, and things that I've read is piercing weapons or man-made weapons typically are the ones that can hurt her. They usually don't fatally hurt her, but they can hurt her. So she's been shot before, she's been cut, but most of the time, since she's so fast, she can dodge them or block them. So it's typically not a big deal for her.
Well, it's one of those things where they very clearly liked the idea of her blocking bullets with the bracers. That became a really important thing. Absolutely. It's lovely aesthetic. Right. But then as she became more durable in comics, more and more they were like, well, why does she need to do that if she's bulletproof? So different writers have felt the need to resolve that tension. Sometimes it makes less sense than others, I think. But
yeah. And with that too, she has a pretty good healing factor. So whenever she does get hurt, typically she's not out of commission for long. I did want to point out her stamina, because I think that's something, it goes along with who she is as a character. So if you remember if you've watched the animated movie, Justice League Doom, how they were planning on killing Wonder Woman was to make her fight herself to death. Mm-hmm. Like, to where, because she never gets up on a fight, but she can keep going. But Cyborg saw that she was going to have a heart attack because she kept fighting all those cheetahs. So, yeah, that's always a cool thing to have, I guess, that you're like a horse. You run yourself to death. Mm-hmm. Practically. But according to a wiki, she doesn't tire out because her body produces no lactic acids.
That's a very specific touch that some writer left in.
Mm-hmm. Trying to explain how you can have stamina because people wear out because of lactic acid. So like,
exactly.
Yeah. How about this? She's magic.
She's a god.
Mm-hmm. I do not need explanations on why this Amazonian woman does not tire out. Like, do not give me any of that. Also, she has immortality. She doesn't age past her prime since she is a demigod, ? Maybe. Depending on what origin. And then one of her unique abilities that I don't think many people realize that she has or knows that she has is animal empathy. So she can actually communicate with animals and in a slight way command them. So like wild beasts and stuff like that. So she has been shown in the comics to use animals to help her or to get information. And a lot of times she just like goes up to a lion and just like pets it. And it's like, hey girl.
I think it's because when you're strong enough to crack a mountain in half by punching it, you don't usually need to be like, oh, get him, the wild boar. Like, it's just not as important. But.
Yeah. So that's pretty much her powers. I guess that's not pretty much her powers. Those are amazing powers to have. I would kill for any of those powers. And it wouldn't be complete without Wonder Woman's equipment that she has. So
iconic.
Exactly. And funny enough, she really didn't start carrying out equipment until like the post-crises.
Are you serious?
Yeah, a lot of times it was just the lasso and her bracers. That's it. So she didn't have a sword. She didn't have a shield. If she ever did use it, it was in a weird, Paradise Island spinoff type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to talk about her equipment. So the bracers of submission. That's the thing that she... What episode was it that we talked about why, like the weird things with her bracers? Do you guys remember?
Probably DC objects.
Yes, that was it.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, we talked about Wonder Woman quite a bit in that episode.
She has so much objects.
Yeah. Yeah. So her bracers, recent continuity. If you've been keeping up with Dark Knight's metal, there's all these metals out there that have all these magical properties, and it's DC's way of explaining why some things are the way it is. It's like vibranium and adamantium on the Marvel side. So her bracers are apparently made out of 8th metal, so not 9th metal, but like the 8th one. Mm-hmm. I don't care. I don't think it adds anything to it. I didn't need to know what they were made of beforehand. But they're pretty much indestructible. They're capable of withstanding and deflecting forces as big as Darkseid's Omega beams. So that's all I need to know.
Mm-hmm. One would have thought they'd be made out of adamantine, the metal that all the gods' stuff is made from. I don't know why that they would have need to avoid that.
Yeah, prior to the current explanation of it, it was just like the Amazon material that they had. So it was like Amazonian steel, essentially.
Like only found on Themyscira.
Exactly. Right. So the next one, and I think it's probably her most iconic, is the Lasso of Truth or the Golden Perfect.
That's amazing.
It has so many uses.
It's a good name. Golden Perfect is a good name.
It's so good. It's so good.
That's what they call me in the army.
Oh my God.
Makes no sense. You've always been gray.
Never been perfect, so it's a weird name. I'm starting to think it was ironic now that you mention it.
So the Golden Perfect is a sacred relic of the Amazons and was given to them by the gods of Olympus. So in the history of the Amazons and Themyscira, the gods left them with all these relics or artifacts because they were to guard it anyway, and just really was inherited by Wonder Woman. The lasso is well known for the ability to compel anyone to tell them the truth. So that's baseline what it was always used for. If you watch the Linda Carter Wonder Woman shows, you always saw that she would do that, or it's just to hogtie people, apparently. But it also has the ability to connect the hearts and minds of people, like in a telepathic link. if they're all holding it. Super cool. I think that's amazing. I think it really comes in handy when there's like a language barrier. And also a fun fact with it, it can help her locate people, which is interesting. Like, it gives her feelings, like it can still communicate to her, which I think is interesting. So as long as she has a strong bond with that person, it's able to guide her to them. So that's pretty cool. And then also, it's like an exorcism rope. So it can expel demons. It can cure people of ailments. So it has very, very many uses.
And it also, just if you don't have a familiarity, it makes you tell the truth. It doesn't prevent you from lying. It draws the truth out of you.
Literally, like there's been some stories where it hurts them, or there's just this like insatiable need to tell the truth, like they just can't help it. So it does come in handy.
Like Aquaman cool. in the movie.
Oh yeah.
That's such a weird. I had no idea what was going on in that scene until he like got up. I was like, "What is happening? He's talking way too much now."
I don't want to die. I just got into this whole thing, and you're amazing. And it's like, yeah.
All right, next up is the one on the tippy top of her head. It's the tiara. So I put this one in here because it's not just a fashion statement, even though it is amazing. She uses it as a weapon. I mean, this shows her like combat abilities to the max, where she's like, "Hey, you know this tiara I have on my head? Take it." She throws it at people.
She has straight up fucked people up with this thing.
Mm-hmm. I'll actually give a better example later on too. All right, next one, the sword and shield. So this really varies. I think it's the one thing that varies with her so much. And with the movies that came out, the comics kind of leaned that way also. So some instances, her sword has been made by Hephaestus.
Because, of course.
Right. And it's the god killer. It's the sword of Athena. So whichever one you really want to pick.
It's got a great tagline that it can shave off the electron from an atom. Like, it's that sharp. That's a lot.
Who
crazy.
knows that?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows that?
A guy who has made a list compiling every single weapon in the DC and Marvel universes.
Like, I don't know what I'm like. Fear this sword. It could shave. Like, what? I don't even know what that is.
I think it's pretty badass.
I think the implication is that it can cut real good.
It's sharp.
Yeah.
It's really sharp. All right. And then last but not least, it would not be complete without the invisible plane. Some people say jet. It's technically a plane, but who cares? So currently they said the plane is also made of nth metal. And that's what gives it the ability to be invisible and be indestructible. But I prefer the original one where that plane is actually the plane that Steve Trevor crashed on the island with. Super cute. Love it. I think that's super sentimental. And the Amazons just upgraded it with their tech.
That is cool. I like that.
Better story.
Yeah. I prefer the thing not exist. That would be mine. It's the only part of her history or like the things associated with Wonder Woman I'm not a huge fan of.
But it's so fun.
It is fun. But it does lead me, before we get off of her powers and stuff, to an issue that if you're a casual fan of Wonder Woman, here's something you should know. She can fly.
Yeah.
The movies really confused people on this, at least the first one, and it's looking like the second one. They don't, like, it's not clear if she's just a jumper or whatever. And moreover,
I don't understand why. Like, I got
an explanation for you.
Oh,
I believe. Okay.
Go ahead.
I believe.
I was like, do you have a line to Patty Jenkins, and why don't I have it?
No, but it's not just that. It's not just the movies. It's in the comics. They've done this too. It's because she's a Street Fighter character. And a lot of her moves, I'm not saying this is a good reason. I'm saying this is sort of why a lot of the art, she kicks, she does jump kicks and stuff. And it's like, it just doesn't look as cool when she's flying and stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
she doesn't have the billowing cape. She's meant to be stabbing people with swords, punching them. Okay, it makes sense visually why they wouldn't want that.
Exactly. But I don't think it's actually, she hasn't they haven't said she can't fly. It's just why you often don't see her fly is what I'm saying. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, if she hasn't flown, if she didn't fly in Justice League. So it'd be really weird if she flew in the 80s, you know, like way earlier prior to Justice League. I mean, that makes sense, but it's also, you can still have those same scenes and that same fighting style. Mm-hmm. And just have her fly when she's using it for transportation purposes.
Completely agreed. I think it was a mistake that the movies don't have her fly.
Yeah, she she pretty much flies across the ground as it is. I mean, like even in the movies, it looks like she's flying.
But you can see them trying to figure this out because remember in the first movie where she jumps into the bell tower?
At the end, though,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So...
I don't know.
But even then it gets weird because she's like, there's energy everywhere. And you can...
In the trailers, we're only speculating wildly here. It looks like she's...
That outfit, right? With the wings.
Well, no, like she's web slinging with her rope, like on lightning. So it's like, all right, I don't think you're flying still. Yeah. It's fine. I mean, I think it's like a weird thing. I think it's only weird because it's like she can do it. So like, why not let her do it? It's like an odd decision to make.
On the other end, you can appreciate about Wonder Woman, what really sets her apart, like in this sort of power sort of thing, is the level of fighting ability that she has. There's not another character, with a few exceptions, but not as popular, that have the physical stats that she has, where she's strong enough to fight a character like Superman, but she's more or less as good a fighter as Batman.
Yeah.
He's even said that she's one of the most formidable hand-to-hand combatants that he's ever faced. Yes. And he's faced Lady Shiva.
Mm-hmm. And she's fought characters like Deathstroke, where she's way stronger than him, but where it's very clear that she's like, actually in a recent issue of the comic where she fights Deathstroke and like kind of like outfights him.
Yeah.
I love it.
I've always been I like her fighting style and usually how she does fight. And it seems to throw people off a little bit because if you think about it, she not only knows like an ancient way of fighting, but she knows a way of fighting that nobody else is getting taught except for all these women on this island.
Hell yeah. So, it's like, she looks like Brad Pitt from Troy. how they modeled that whole fight scene after what like Greek pottery looks like.
Yeah.
I also love though, like that she'll throw in some of those like street moves.
She'll like headbutt you.
Right. Mm-hmm. She'll do elbow drops where it's like, you clearly learned that in the 20th century. Watching WWE.
I like the panels do a good job of this, but one of my favorite parts about her fighting in movies is she's just like a graceful brawler. It's almost like she's doing ballet, but like Jared was saying, she's a street fighter. So it just is like such a bizarre juxtaposition that really works.
Mm-hmm. And that's a wonderful thing to sort of parlay into just this point about like she's a feminist icon. And there's something amazing about the fact that like they just let Wonder Woman be a badass.
Yep.
Like, she should be that. But I just mean like there's just no like she just kicks the crap out of people. And honestly, like Gal Gadot, I was just amazed at how much she pulls that off. Like I'm scared of Gal Gadot. I believe it.
It's amazing because she doesn't necessarily look intimidating. But she is intimidating. You know what I mean? Like
she has some sass, some attitude in that face and the way she moves that you're like, oh shit.
I love this. She doesn't look intimidating, but she looks like the way she looks at you is intimidating.
Like, she's gonna kill me. Oh shit.
It totally works. Yeah. I know this is gonna sound like it's out of left field, but look, I don't have a lot of gay moments. Okay. Some gay people, some gay men have thousands of gay moments in a given day. I'm more like I'm going somewhere with this. I don't have many. But I will tell you that one of mine is that sometimes when I think about Wonder Woman, I want to cry. I don't know why. I'm just like, she's perfect. Everything she does is wonderful.
That's how I felt while watching the movie when she crosses no man's land, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody had a gay moment during No Man's Land in the Wonder Woman movie. Like, that's right. She's not intimidating or, she doesn't, you feel it. Yeah. Is that what Absolutely. I'm trying to say? Like, she feels powerful. She feels graceful. She feels intimidating. She feels all this stuff with just being who she is. And I couldn't imagine a more perfect person to play her in live action. But even just across the board in most of the comics and even the animated stuff, they always get like the perfect type of casting for her.
Mm-hmm.
I really can't think of a bad casting except for maybe that like failed TV pilot that was going to happen in 2011. That just wasn't for me. I don't want my Wonder Woman to look like she's trying to be beautiful with, all this makeup and stuff on. That's just not Wonder Woman.
Yeah. And I look, we all have different investments in terms of what characters we like the most. I have to say, we've talked about this before, Aquaman's my favorite character, but Wonder Woman is a very close second on the DC level. Like, Aquaman's my favorite DC character. Wonder Woman's a close second. And if I had to argue objectively, I think she may be the best character in their roster. I was saying before we started, like, I just think she's better than Batman and Superman. We'll get into why. There are things about her character that are truly original. And, like, I don't know, she's the top character, in my opinion, in terms of the writing and the concept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm not sure. This doesn't really relate to Wonder Woman, but you made me think of something. So you know how a lot of people will generally say that Spider-Man is like the best superhero? Like he's like the best of the best. Who would be that for DC? I don't necessarily think it would be Wonder Woman.
It would be for me.
Really?
Yeah, because of what she joins together. Okay, so the reason people pick Spider-Man for Marvel makes sense because Spider-Man is like the perfect hero for what they began in the Silver Age, which is the everyman character, brings the human into the superhuman.
Well, he's still that way too, which I think is great.
But the difference is this: Batman is the sort of like broken character from, and human, and also he's a billionaire, which makes me like him less.
Yeah, but you also don't want to be him. I don't want to be Batman.
And Superman is the sort of God among men sort of character. What I think makes Diana perfect in this respect is that she joins both the warlike nature of the gods and like what people could be. Yeah. Like the perfect, like the and we're going to talk about this, but like some of what the idea was like how basically women, like all woman society without man really had this potential, or at least that she's like the strength of the feminist movement. So I have to say she'd be up there.
I mean, it just made me curious because I saw that earlier today. Like, and I agree. I think Spider-Man is one of the best superheroes. Like, is that one of the definitions of a superhero? And I was trying to think. I was like, who would be DC's? I kept saying Wonder Woman, but I was like, well, she's murdered quite a few times. And
before we completely get off the topic, too, I have to tell you there's a lot of people that should have eaten crow when her movie absolutely crushed at the box office, was a critical success. Because you have to understand, people in the comic industry had been talking about how this character could not be done.
Yeah.
And I think DC has relied on on Superman and Batman so long and acting like those are their only viable characters.
Well, that's what the most hilarious part of Batman versus Superman was. Everyone was like, what a shit movie, but Wonder Woman was really good.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And then her movie crushed. So I think we're past the point of not knowing that she is at least as strong a character. And I would argue they really need more and more of DC to be orbital of her. And again, I don't want them to hate Superman. I just think move some of the emphasis over for a lot of good reasons.
All right. So buckle up, buttercups, because the publication debut / history for Wonder Woman is one of the most interesting I've read, and definitely the most interesting of the deep dives that we've covered. So starting out, basics. First appeared All-Star Comics number 8, October of 41, so she's been around a hell of a long time. And her first feature was in Sensation Comics number 1 in January of 42. So Wonder Woman was a title published by DC almost continuously, except for a brief hiatus in 1986, which it blew my mind. Because again, a lot of the deep dive characters we do are kind of small, so it's like, oh, they had a run here, and then they had a run here, and then they had a run for 20 years, and then they got canceled again. This one was like, no, since the 40s, there's been a Wonder Woman comic coming out
for more than 40 years.
So that was kind of cool. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit intense and weird and crazy. So Wonder Woman was created by an American psychologist and writer, William Moulton Marston, pen name Charles Moulton. He was the psychologist that invented the polygraph, which convinced him that women are more honest in certain situations and could work more efficiently. And so he decided that he wanted Wonder Woman to be the kind of woman he believed should run society. So he very much was like, women are better.
Yeah.
let's create a woman and improve it, and have her, make an awesome movie 80 billion years later.
Like how, I mean, if you step back and look at all of the spotlights and like deep dives, or not you guys, but like us, that we've done, particularly with women and some LGBTQ characters, they've all had like terrible, like, reasons to create them, or when they were first created, they're just not great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we want a sexier person. We need this male. All these people are saying this character's gay. We need to give him a woman. It's like, that's gross. But like, this reason for creating this character makes me love her even more.
Origin that Wonder Woman has is, I would argue, is more feminist in its orientation than what it's going to be like in 2011.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's strange because you see major changes in her characterization and Steve's as well after the creator died and new teams took over. So it kind of sucks. And you're right, though. It is strange that, like, from conception, she was actually very forward thinking. Like you had mentioned, she kind of spawned from early feminist movements, especially birth control pioneer Margaret Sanger, in particular her piece Woman and the New Race. Yeah, so just a lot of progressive ideas here. And from the creator, he was in a polyamorous relationship with his wife Elizabeth and their partner Olive, and that's who is credited as being the inspiration for the character's appearance. So, I mean, yeah, he was kind of an odd one for his time.
I love it. Like, he is an oddball, and like I don't want to praise him completely because he did do
the subjugation.
Yeah, there was some weird things that they did.
He was obsessed with BDSM, and that trickled into Wonder Woman.
A lot of bondage, which is, I guess, fine if both parties consent to it. But don't portray a woman as needing to use bondage as a superpower.
Let's talk about that a bit, because what I think is interesting is, like, it really depends on how you're focused. And I agree that he shouldn't be just like excused or something like that.
Right.
But some people have defended him on the basis that, like, the bondage is already there that he's commenting on, and that much of what he thought he was showing was Wonder Woman breaking out of bondage.
Right.
He's actually said that through several interviews, that a lot of his attempts is misinterpreted.
Yeah, like, so the question is, like, do you think that him putting her into bondage is a fetishist point in the first place, or do you think it's emancipatory for the point of the story to be her breaking bondage? It's sort of like people have looked at it differently.
Yeah, I think it could be both. I know there's interviews with him, and they did that movie about the creation of Wonder Woman. So definitely watch that and watch all the interviews with him, or read the interviews with him. And he has commented on that stuff, and you could see it. I feel personally, when I saw it, it was like, oh, well, I mean, it seems like he likes that stuff. So it's like, that's probably where it came from. But also he wanted to do like some social commentary on it, because he was very much involved with all of those feminist movements and the women he was with. So it just makes sense that, it was involved. It's
like both things, because he clearly he thought that, like, bondage was this important thing to understanding people. He has these weird quotes where it's like, it's like, we need to learn how to be in submission, and then we could have,
I mean, you need to be the student before you're the teacher, so that makes sense to me.
You're thinking of the Karate Kid. That's
that
was a little
that's
different.
Right. Waxing and bondage are not the same thing. Yeah, I mean, her origin or her publication history, I think, is interesting. But I highly recommend watching that movie and reading the books on that, because he has quite a bit just on her origin.
Fascinating publication history of Wonder Woman. So we're gonna do the origin now. I'm gonna tell you more or less this story of Wonder Woman, at least where she comes from. The problem is multifaceted in trying to tell this story, because at some level, if you've never followed a comic book history before, they have a tendency to expand and contract. So their origins often take years and years to sort of develop, and then they'll sort of contract by somebody will recap it and re-explain what's been talked about for the last 20 years. What makes matters worse, of course, is that DC is it has had several relaunches and different kinds of, like, reboots and things like that. And so in a lot of ways, the creators of Wonder Woman comics have been trying to catch up and be part of those massive changes or something like that. But the movie, if you've seen it, gives you a decent idea of the core of the story. Now, the beginning of this story is there's Paradise Island, not yet called Themyscira, by the way. That's a name that's going to later on come along. But so you have Paradise Island.
It's called that because there's nothing but women.
That's right. Exactly. As I tell the story, notice the overall, like, unapologetically feminist parable that it's meant. This is an incidental or whatever. So it's this perfect island of Amazonian characters. By the way, it isn't clear how mythologically oriented they are in the first place. The idea is they're somehow like connected to the Amazons of old, but we don't yet have like that they're empowered by the gods. That's going to come later.
In the conception of them.
Exactly. So originally the idea is like a bunch of Amazon women, a perfect society, advanced in every way, run only by women. And on that, the queen of the Amazons, Hippolyta, she has no children. These are sort of immortal characters from mythology, so they can't necessarily, they can't have kids, right? But she so wants children that she crafts a baby out of clay and prays to the gods to bring it to life, and they bring the child to life, and that's our Diana of Paradise Island.
I tried doing that in art class.
Does not work.
It didn't work.
I don't want a baby, so I wouldn't try that. Maybe I'd go like a dragon.
Yeah.
Kayla's like that student in that class where you have to take care of a sack of flour, and she just made a cake out of it.
If you do that in real life with a
Cannibalism,
baby,
you're going to jail.
You will go to prison. That is true.
You do like the show Hannibal, so...
I do. I don't want to aspire to be like him, though.
I don't know. We'll see.
So anyway, no. So Hippolyta prays to the Greek gods. Hold on one second.
Turn off your phone.
I had to turn it on because we were talking earlier. Okay, this part gets cut out.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Turn off your damn phone.
You bet. Nobody can know I have a phone, Noah. You turn this off.
No one can know he's reachable.
If we get disconnected, my phone is off, so it's going to take a second. Anyway.
You could have just put it in airplane mode.
That would take way too long. Okay, anyway. It's impossible who could understand the modes of a phone. Okay, anyway. So Hippolyta creates a baby or a baby shape out of clay. And because she really wants a child, the gods smile upon her, and then they turn the baby to life, and that's Diana, what will later be Themyscira. Now it's interesting, and then what happens is Diana grows up as an Amazon. She's the only baby they've ever known.
The only child.
The only child at all, that's right. Well, Vinica, you're right. Except for the children that wash up on the shore from time, I don't know. Anyway.
There has been a few stories.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah, that's exactly right. So what's important here is that she's a woman completely, or a child that's raised completely around women and completely
influenced by man.
Well, I was going to say uncorrupted by man. And this is the part where this is a thing I knew that Kayla would like, that I want to mention. Is that, so we now have an origin story. I'm going to tell you the rest of it, but an origin story that especially in DC, but generally that doesn't depend on whiny man tragedy.
Yeah. My wife was killed. They kidnapped my baby. This is Taken 7.
What was that thing you said about Thanos with the tear going down his cheek?
Oh my God. No, I just hate that part.
Exactly. So instead of Diana becoming a hero and having power on the basis of what she's lost, what she was deprived of, it's the fact that she's without corruption that makes her this great hero. And our story sort of begins when because this was during World War II. During the war, a plane, an Air Force plane, crashes on Paradise Island. It's filled with a pilot. It's filled with inside.
It's filled with one pilot.
Yeah,
blended together.
They're hauling Steve Trevor's.
It's like a clown car.
Exactly.
70 of them come out of the cockpit.
But it's only one survives, sadly. And
no wonder it crashed.
So it's Air Force pilot Colonel Steve Trevor, and he nearly dies. He's saved from the wreckage by the Amazonians, and they have to return him to man's world.
You take it back.
Exactly. So that's the core of the story. I should also say the one part that's kind of misogynistic here, and it doesn't really completely pass the Bechdel test, so to speak, is that Diana falls in love with Steve because she's never seen a man before. Now, I will say that sounds bad, and in some ways it is, but if you think about it, it's also meant to be a reverse damsel story. Because there's plenty of stories where the man saves the beautiful woman. Beautiful woman he falls in love with her because she's so gorgeous or something like that.
And needs help.
Exactly. So rather than it being like, oh, she has to have a man, it's meant to be more of a reverse of that sort of like damsel story. Now, this is where things change. And
I did want to say, I'm sorry, before you keep going.
Yeah, go ahead.
With that, I also feel like it was very reluctant at first. Like they weren't immediately, both of them weren't like, I love you, me. It like built over time. So I do think that it was a little better than, just saving the damsel or saving the Dan. I don't know what the guy version of.
Be where the people are.
I think it's Danzel, like Daniel, but damsel. Anyway, so the point is that that's the core of the story, but this story has been sort of reinterpreted across time, and little details have a tendency to change. So some of those details, like her powers. So initially, it wasn't like, you should just know, DC early on especially wasn't really concerned with power levels. What, Superman, for instance, is like, like the tagline, he's strong as a locomotive, able to leap. That's kind of true for the first Superman stuff. Equally, she's just an Amazon, and that idea is that she's a badass. Right? It's not until a little bit later, till early in the Silver Age, that they start associating her more with having like literal power blessed by the gods. Like
it started getting more like mythological.
Absolutely.
Like they expanded outside of Themyscira or Paradise Island to be like, oh, by the way, they're gods.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, the subtle way this happens, because later on it's going to be canonized, but it also begins in a very similar way that the Superman thing works, where they just sort of describe her in hyperbole, and that hyperbole in the comics becomes more real. So they'll say things like, she's as beautiful as Aphrodite, wise as Athena, stronger than Hercules, swifter than Hermes. It's not clear originally that meant anything more than she's strong, fast, and stuff like that. But as it goes along and she becomes more powerful, like all the characters do during the Golden and Silver Age, that we have an idea that she's actually sort of blessed by the gods. There's some other stuff too, like in certain tellings of this story, Wonder Woman is the name she gets, like a title for winning this contest to see who's going to take Steve Trevor back to the mainland, and then also like reform them from men's evil ways. There's also times when she doesn't find out how awful they are until she gets to man's world.
Isn't that like super interesting though, that they were like, we need to hold a contest of champions to see who's going to take this dirty, filthy, stupid man back to his home. Also, they didn't like men, or like, man's world.
Yeah.
By proxy, man. So it's interesting that the Amazons were like, I'll volunteer to take him back. It's so weird to me. Like they had to have a story to make Wonder Woman go to man's world, but
it's true.
It's always interesting.
And like I say, this is sort of just the core of the story. Some of the very thing you're saying is interesting. Certain people have gone back and kind of tried to explain that peculiarity. So like I mentioned, this sort of like weird connection to like this mandate that they have to like improve man's world that's fallen. That's sort of there from the beginning. Oh, also I wanted to touch on, you mentioned they have a contest, but Diana's not supposed to do it because she's the queen, but she wants to be like a great hero, so she disguises
she's the
herself.
Princess.
Yeah, sorry. Her mom's the queen. So
How dare you take that from Hippolyta?
I know, exactly. She has so little. But anyway, so the idea is she disguises herself, wins the contest, and then Hippolyta, by her own honor and later on the sort of will of the gods, she's sort of forced to like allow Diana to leave. Now, I'm going to give you one last piece of background from the main origin that's sort of important. You mentioned, why do the Amazons care? Aren't they supposed to hate the men and their fallen world and stuff like that? Well, the idea is that the George Perez's run, which really kind of concretizes and I think enhances and beautifies this whole sort of thing, he tells the story similar to from mythology, when the long time ago, the Amazons were the sort of chosen women of many of the Greek gods, and that they are despoiled by the evil Hercules and his men. Hercules encounters the Amazons, and because he's heard about them and how great they are, he wants to experience them. He kind of implies like, hey, we're here to like educate you dumb women. Hippolyta defeats him in battle. Hercules is so shamed that he comes back later under a guise of peace, poisons Hippolyta, knocks her unconscious, sacks the city, and imprisons the Amazons.
Fuck that guy.
Exactly. But the thing is the Amazons are supposed to be good upholders of the God's law. This includes all the like Aphrodite and Demeter and Athena
everybody
and everything like that, right? And rather than just try to seek justice and overthrow their shackles, they overthrow their shackles and murder most of Hercules' men after he leaves. And so
yeah, exactly.
Well, it leaves the gods in a weird bind, and they're like, okay, so what do we do? So they basically say, you've gone too far away from justice into vengeance. So for all time, you'll be immortals, but you have to take care of this island, and they end up being wardens for a great evil that's underneath. So that's basically why it's important that the Amazons like basically protect what's right and do good and like reform the world. So in a lot of ways, there's some messianic shit in here where Diana, when she's sent to man's world, not only to return Steve Trevor to his home, she's got to fix the fallen world fucked up by men.
That seems to be like a through line with most of the origins that you'll read or see about Wonder Woman, even in the movie. You know, she feels this duty, or she's given this purpose.
A responsibility.
Exactly. And because, I mean, she technically has been on Paradise Island. She's never had to worry about anything. Everything's fine. They're always training for a war, but never having them until she leaves. So,
absolutely.
But, yeah, I always loved that about her, though, because it's the sense of responsibility that she has.
If you can do something.
Exactly.
And it's because she loves us so much. Oh, it kills me.
She loves truth and justice and war.
Absolutely. So the last thing I'll say in this sort of history is in New 52, this is where we get a massive change to her history. And there's been a lot of controversy and different interpretations of it. We find out that upon the New 52 remake, if you don't know, this is when DC did a big relaunch of all of their history.
And most of the New 52 is really good, I swear.
I know. and look, people have argued that the New 52 Wonder Woman series is really good, and in certain ways it is. She's an interesting, dynamic character.
It's super good.
There's
just weird decisions.
But in reference to the origin.
The problem is we find out that, according to the New 52 sort of like chronology, that this was all a lie, and that instead of being crafted by clay and made real and empowered by the gods, in fact, Wonder Woman is the son.
Fucking Zeus.
The son. She's a man now. No, Wonder Woman is the daughter of Hippolyta, of course, but Zeus. And it turns out they kept this all in secret because Hera's a vengeful goddess, and she would like punish the Amazons. And look, this there's a couple good things I have to say. One is that it does make her demigod. And it sort of, in some sense, gives her a greater stature, and that's nice. But the problem is, if you go back to this original sort of like utopian vision that Marston means to say, there's a kind of, not satire, but like he's making a critical claim about what, paradise would be if it's only women. And Wonder Woman gets her entire powers from women. And moreover, when Perez went and redid the origin, all of the gods that give Wonder Woman her power are women, plus Hermes, because let's face it, Hermes is gay. It's kind of true. And specifically Zeus is left out. So now when they rewrite the history, the idea is now Wonder Woman gets her power from Zeus.
And out of all of them, it would be Zeus too.
The most patriarchal, rapey god.
Yeah.
Well, also like Hippolyta, come on, girl. Like, this is the worst person to sleep with because of who he's married to. She is psychotic. As if I know her in real life, but just going from stories about her in any medium that you look at, Athena, she's always terrifying.
Yeah. And basically, I mean, there's some other things that they made her be like the two, like I had a connection to Ares, which which also kind of went back on the idea that the Amazons are supposed to be about peace. And there are also places that they make, Azzarello, the writer, makes Amazons these weird rapists. That rather than, in other words, that they would like capture stranded sea people and then force them to have their kids and then kill them. And that's how they populated it. Look, Azzarello might have been a good writer, but it he had no connection to the original feminist, impulses and instincts of the comic, the original conception, and he had some really problematic shit along the way. So then, and this will be how I can end my section, these criticisms were heard loud and clear in certain respects, and they got Greg Rucka to come back and really reform and dismiss a lot of the stuff that had been said in the New 52. They still kind of gave, I guess it's a bit confusing as to like whether or not Diana is a demigoddess or not.
She definitely is.
She is, but
yeah. I mean, it is. You're right. I love Greg Rucka's run for the Rebirth. I think at this point we can say she is Zeus's kid, but the way he handled it was better than how it was handled in like the New 52, because it still had all of the makings of, you know, what was good about Wonder Woman without having it really relying on the men that happened to be involved, be that gods or not.
For sure. Yeah. There, and Rucka himself said it, like, kind of doesn't matter how she was born. Nobody cares how Superman was born. Nobody cares how Wonder Woman was born. So why do they care about Wonder Woman? I don't know. I really like the original origin is completely standalone. Yeah. There's no other comic book character. Somebody also mentioned, look, when you make Wonder Woman about like where she was born and then she leaves, it's a lot like Thor's origin. Like it makes it a little less original. So anyway, but that, for your mileage may vary, but that is Wonder Woman's sort of basic origin. That's what you need to know going into this.
Do you guys have a preference if she was made from clay or if she was born from a out of wedlock connection?
Like clay is more interesting. Do you know how many kids Zeus has?
Exactly.
So many.
True. And not to mention, at the end of the New 52 and Darkseid War, there's this big thing that was like this big revelation to Wonder Woman that she actually had a secret twin brother that was also birthed at the same time, which he came in later. But it's also, I think that's why I always like the clay.
I like the inherent courtly drama that goes in with, like, it's very Shakespearean, like how Thor is sometimes if she is born of Zeus, because there's that inherent drama. So there can be good storytelling there. I just have that preference for the clay because, like you had said, it kind of it could have been any other god but Zeus, really.
That's a big part of this, that if they wanted to make her a demigod, they could have made her, I mean, they really could have made her.
What about Hermes?
What about Apollo?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, for real. Yeah, my problem is with Zeus. So
yeah.
But again, to be clear, some of this idea is that like all of the female goddesses, I guess goddesses are female, all the goddesses use their divine will and perfection and create this perfect woman. It's really hard to kind of like subtract that, you know what I mean, and not really affect the amazing part of this origin, I think.
That's the funny thing. So now we're going on now, what, like almost, like, when did the New 52 start? I can't remember. 2011. So we're in now where like new generations of readers have no idea about the clay stuff.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the movies are heavily influenced by like the recent canon stuff, especially with the lightning and everything and how she can harness it. So it's like she's clearly a demigod in this instance.
Yeah.
Right. So it is interesting now that it's like, I think we've just completely gone away from that, which is kind of sad because I like the clay.
The movie was clever. The movie tells the story of the clay, but she says it like it's a kind of legend that might not be true.
Yeah, it's more of like, this is a pretty way to tell the story.
Yeah.
Instead of like, this is literally what happened, Steve Trevor. I'm a clay monster.
Also, I mean, Diana's demigod or not, I mean, Diana as Wonder Woman is as powerful as any demigod, one way or another. As a matter of fact, she kicks the shit out of Hercules on a regular basis.
Yep.
Yeah.
As she should.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's Wonder Woman's origin. She's on an island. She may or may not have been made by clay. Some man crashes on her beach, and the rest is history.
In the making. So, speaking of the man that crashed on her island, we always start the deep dives with their primary love interest, if they have one. And, of course, Diana does. Steve Trevor has been there since very, very close to the beginning. So, he was originally created by the original creator, Marston, and appeared in All-Star Comics number 8. So, all the way back in 1941. This is going to be important when I rant angrily in a bit. So throughout his comic history with Wonder Woman, Steve Trevor is a trusted friend. So even if they're not romantically involved, and in some alternate universes, they never were. Sometimes he's much older. He's always a very well-trusted friend, love interest, and a partner who introduces Diana to man's world, like Jared said, and serves as Wonder Woman's liaison with that world in a lot of ways. The exact position changes. Like originally he was the liaison with the United Nations, as he was an intelligence officer in the United States Air Corps, Army Air Corps, which is, that branch of the military doesn't exist anymore.
No, well, it turned into the Air Force.
The Air Force. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Right.
This is the part that, okay. So, In 1969, the artist Mike Wowski, I'm so sorry for the pronunciation, but after 30 years of Steve Trevor being in Wonder Woman's comics, because remember, she doesn't take a day off. She had an issue coming out every month. He decides to kill Steve Trevor because he was dull and boring, and I didn't like him, so I disposed of him, is the direct quote. Yeah, so after 30 years, the artist was like, fuck that guy, and killed him. And of course, the character was resurrected by the creative team again, as he does. So it'll be interesting to see how they bring him back in this movie.
I did want to. So it's not that I don't disagree.
Oh yeah, because I was only given Steve Trevor because no one else wanted him, and I was like, I love Steve. Let me do him because I don't want you guys to shit talk all day. So I can't wait to see what Noah has to say. To me, Steve Trevor is like the Lois Lane to Superman.
I'm very Steve Trevor neutral. I just want to be clear.
Okay, well, I guess I can forgive that. So now I'm just going to glare at Noah.
I mean, he is like the Lois Lane to her. I just don't find him. Now, I don't think killing a character should be reasons because you don't like him and they think they're dull. It's like, you're a writer, make him not dull.
It was the artist that made that call too. So I got confused about the editorial decision that went in there. Sorry, that just bothered me. Yeah, it was the artist that was like, I hate him. I'm going to kill him.
Interesting. It's like, I think he's boring.
So I don't know if they just drew a picture of Steve decapitated and the writer's like, oh shit, I guess I have to write some dialogue to go with that.
And on that note, it's a bit annoying too, because it's like, okay, you don't like him, don't use him. Let another writer who comes later use him.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't like. It's much more of a political position at that point.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. I mean, he's never like captured me. Like I've never really been drawn to him. I should say, like when I read Superman comics and I see Lois, I'm like, oh, there's Lois, or like Flash comics, I'm like, oh, there's Iris. It's like Wonder Woman comics, I'm like, ah, it's Trevor. And it's usually going to involve the military. Yay. Like, I'm not reading Wonder Woman comics for, like, the military aspect of it. I'm reading it for the mythology and her. And I just don't like how he treats her sometimes. And I don't like how she lets down her guard with him. It's like, no, don't do that.
You have
get
to
hurt
let down
every time.
your guard when you're in love, Noah. That's how you build healthy relationships. But anyway, the character was later resurrected by another creative team.
Scorching.
From that point on, though, his visibility varies through comics, so probably how Noah wants it. Throughout the 70s up until the 90s, the character sometimes is sidelined, sometimes is absent altogether in favor of, because that's when Wonder Woman comics, rightly so, began to focus on fantasy and action adventure, where Wonder Woman didn't need romance. She was having her own adventures, which is awesome. Yeah, exactly. I like those too. More recently, though, Steve has come back into the forefront of Wonder Woman comic, specifically the reboot. It was the New 52, 2011. He is portrayed as a senior government agent and a super spy, so not very different from his origin. And his close connection to Wonder Woman makes him the United States liaison to the Justice League. So instead of being her liaison to the United Nations, he's now the liaison for the United States, for the Justice League. In 2013, he, in his capacity as a skilled government agent, Steve himself becomes a member of the new incarnation of the Justice League of America. So he eventually joins the Justice League. So suck on that, Noah.
What's he gonna do?
Gather the troops? No.
Shut up, you guys. He's often the primary love interest for Diana Prince. The relationship, even if it's not like a confirmed relationship, is often flirtatious. But even when they're not romantically involved, they're always really steadfast friends. So the relationship is normally pretty solid. Chris Pine, who played him in the movie, he did a very good job, described Trevor as roguish, cynical realist, whose awful, brutish nature of modern civilization, and is also like a worldly and charming guy. He's kind of set up to be a balance to Wonder Woman. His personality is supposed to, on purpose, be antithesis to hers. They've also never really had the problem because of the original conception. In the first, 30 years, they take turns saving each other, but it's mostly, currently and back then, Diana saving him. So it really was like a turn on the head of, the damsel in distress. He's proposed to Diana several times throughout comic history, but Diana You mentioned the laws of the gods. In Aphrodite's law, saving the world comes before marriage, so she can't marry him until she saves the world. Which...
I love that. Not just because like I have weird feelings with Steve Trevor. I just love that they literally made a law. They're like, Wonder Woman, you can never get married because you are a strong, independent woman and you don't need no man or woman.
I don't think that's not exactly what the law says, but
that's how I'm seeing
it.
The
law did put an impossible bar to reach before getting married. She just has to save the world forever.
No, the law, it's like the gods version of that thing your parents would say. It's like, you finish your chores and then you can play with your friends.
The chores never end.
Exactly.
But yeah, in my opinion, I really like Steve. I feel like when he's done well, a la Chris Pine version in the comics, in the movies, he's a really charismatic, charming person. And again, I really do like the balance that like a demigod like Superman or Wonder Woman having like a human counterpart to really balance that aspect of the relationship. I just really like that dynamic. I find it very interesting, and I feel like Steve does a good job of balancing out Diana.
Let's face it, the movie very much helped.
Yeah, for sure.
Reconvince people that it's the same thing with Thor and Jane Foster, where I've tried to insist to people, trust me, nobody cared about Jane Foster until that movie. Like, she wasn't in the comics, nobody talked about her, nobody missed her. Natalie Portman does like, oh, Jane Foster's good. Yeah. I see you.
Well, and Chris Pratt, Star-Lord, we bring that up a lot too, where the interpretation starts to take hold. So hopefully that happens with Steve more in the comics as well.
Yeah, there was definitely a big influence. Like after the Wonder Woman movie, you saw Steve in more comics. They literally, I think there was a special.
Animated movies, video games. He's making like, not maybe front and center, but like peripheral appearances in most of Wonder Woman's stuff now.
I do want to say before we leave him, that you brought up a good point and made me realize like the thing that I do like about them that I don't think I ever realized that I like about them is that they're never not together or they're never not friendly.
Yeah, like in whatever capacity, Steve's normally there by her side. So
yeah,
it's not like Green Lantern with Hal Jordan and Carol Ferris, where Carol's like,
God.
"I'm gonna try to kill you sometimes."
Yeah, sometimes.
I got a space rock, and now two can do.
I just always love. She's like, I got one now too.
yeah. And he's like, I'm glad we're equals. And she's like, nah, I gotta kill you. It's part of the rock thing. I gotta do it. Okay, so speaking of a character that's been in the media or in movies and things like that, like is now probably more important in the comics than ever, is a character like Etta Candy. Comedy, like for levity's sake, in the movie, it just stands out completely. Like she stole the show in so many ways.
Well, I just now realized that she's probably not going to be around in the second movie because it takes place in the 80s.
Because she's probably dead.
Yeah.
Well, lots of dead people are in that movie, so it's fine.
That's okay. Well, true.
No, I mean, I didn't think about that. That she's been like 95 now.
Yeah, it would be like old Peggy. Like how, all that.
It was World War I.
Yeah. So, I mean, Etta essentially did what Steve did, and she was really... Steve introduced her to man's world, but Etta introduced her to women in man's world, and introduced like, okay, this is how women are in man's world. And it was this interesting contrast to see Wonder Woman or Diana Prince at this time see how women are supposed to act in man's world, and it just completely like flipped on its head. She was, it wasn't okay. Like, okay,
she's horrified.
Yeah, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that?
That's a wonderful point, because
Thank you.
I just forgot about the fact that like a lot of times when Wonder Woman would come to man's world, depending on who was writing it and when they were writing Wonder Woman comics, women, she wasn't exactly handled well, or like the places that she found. So she fought the Nazis early on. She was the secretary for the Justice Society of America.
Yeah.
Like that's sort of like, well, she's a lady. Of course, that's what
exactly.
she'll naturally want to answer the phone.
Yeah, and it's even if they didn't like outright be like, this is what women are like in man's world, it's you got to see both of them side by side. And I thought that comparison was always really interesting. Also, they were very insensitive in like the Silver Age with her and what she looked like and how they interpreted her. Like she was very much like the overweight, goofy, I have food, look at me, funny thing.
Oh, you mean Etta Candy? Yeah, they very much like kind of played her up for like did a lot of kind of like fat phobic stuff. Yeah, that's very true.
But I've always liked her. She's cool now in the comics. She's like this super high level, task enforcer, and she's also a lesbian too. So cool.
They definitely have tried to move her more into like a more significant sort of government role. I mean, by the time you get to George Perez's run, she's a lieutenant in the military. Yep. She's like a kind of like active soldier. She also fights. Like even back then, she had guns and she was like fighting Deimos and Phobos and stuff. So she's pretty cool. She's getting credit back then.
Yeah, couldn't not mention Anna Kenny.
No, it's a very good point.
Left her character.
Yeah, and honestly, like Wonder Woman may do with more supporting characters. She could probably use some more. Not that she doesn't have enough,
she's
but
fine.
like, okay, well, fair.
I agree with you, Jared.
I'm kidding. Jeez.
No, it's fine. But well, okay. Incidentally, and this is a good segue to the character I want to talk about briefly. That's going to be very important in the movie. So when Wonder Woman comes to man's world, there's Steve Trevor, but there's also people like Etta Candy who are kind of like her
chauffeur.
Well, in this case, I mean like the supporting character she will find when she gets to the like human civilization and stuff like that. Now, one of those characters that's going to be particularly important for us is Barbara Ann Minerva.
I love that name.
I know, it's a really good name.
I love her.
It's also not her real name. Apparently, she changed her name to Minerva to be her
Athena.
No, to be her. Well, yes, Minerva's the Roman interpretation, but I can't remember her name. So Cheetah is this character, Barbara Ann Minerva, and apparently that's her mom's name.
Yes,
her mom's maiden name. She took it because she didn't want her dad's.
Because he sucks.
Exactly. So anyway, the point is, there's this character named Cheetah. She's one of Wonder Woman's stalwart rogues. They have a very complicated history together. By the way, I'm not going to go too far into this because we did talk about this on our second ever episode. Noah.
Villains.
Villains. Our favorite villains. It was Cheetah is one of Noah's favorite for a good reason. So I'm going to kind of give you more like what you need to know about the Cheetah for the movie to kind of remind you. So first of all, I'm not going to get into the first two Cheetahs.
It's not worth it. It's real messy.
They were like Catwoman, essentially. I mean, it's like not
just
that
in
different.
like yellow/orange cat ears. That's all.
So when she originally comes in the post-crisis era, she has a kind of similar role to the one we'll come and really care about, in that she was an archaeologist and sort of a collector of antiquities, but she was really kind of evil and fucked up. And when she finds out that there's this Wonder Woman, like this sort of Amazonian from the myths who here, and not only that, has the golden girdle of Gaia that just happens to be turned into the Golden Perfect. She really wants to get her hands on that. Also, in the pursuit of this, she goes to a plant god in Africa, and a country that's later going to be a fictional one named Bwunda. I don't know why they decided to make up their own country, but anyway.
They always do when it has to do with Africa. I'm just saying.
Exactly. And she gets powers from a god.
He loves saying this name.
Named Ertz Cartago, which is not one of my favorite words that's ever been written by man or woman. And Ertz Cartago turns her into the Cheetah. Now, there's been a bunch of different interpretations about what the Cheetah. Sometimes the Cheetah legacy is like the warden of Ertz Cartago because Ertz Cartago is like evil. Sometimes they're like his sexist sex pot emissaries. It's very back and forth.
Sometimes, it's his wife.
Yeah,
like it's disgusting.
Yes. So the point is that he turns this archaeologist, Barbara Minerva, who again is kind of a bad guy early on, into this. And if you've never seen her, she's like this feral cat lady who's got strength pretty comparable to Wonder Woman. One of the first like really strong female characters that could fight Wonder Woman one-on-one. You know what I mean? Not a Superman versus Lex Luthor situation by any means.
Cersei turning men into like pig monsters.
Exactly. Yeah. So for the most part, she at first she wanted the Golden Perfect, and then after I don't know, a couple of decades, most of her interpretation is more just like she wants revenge and she wants to best Wonder Woman in combat. Okay, so that's and she has several appearances, all pretty interesting. I did want to mention one just because Noah's a big fan of speedsters, and you think about cheetahs. Okay, she might as well be for our comic purposes called the Leoparda or Leopardess or something, because for the most part, Cheetah's just like a feral clawing, that's her thing, a saber-tooth style character, whatever.
She's very like handsy.
Exactly. But my point is, in our world, when you think of cheetahs, what's the single...
Yeah, you think of them fast.
As being fast. So at one point, Zoom actually gave her super speed.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was actually one of the fastest sort of characters in DC, especially on the villain side. I wish they had kept that.
That would have been cool.
There's even scenes where she's like stealing the perfect,
and I feel like that would have made her closer on like power level wise to Wonder Woman. Like it would give her more of a challenge for sure.
They make her at certain. And they have fight scenes where she steals the lasso out of Wonder Woman's hands and stuff. Ooh. And obviously Wonder Woman's way stronger and she's a better fighter. But I agree. I think it would have made it more competitive. Didn't make it past the relaunch. New 52 Cheetah. We're not going to talk about because it was basically insignificant. And didn't stick.
There is one really funny moment where
I know what it is.
They do run into her in the jungle, and she turns all of the Justice League into like cheetahs.
Yeah,
because she is magic, and Superman technically has vulnerability to magic, and she got him first. Like she cut him on the throat, and he turned into like just seeing like a cheetah humanoid person in a Superman suit was really funny.
That's awesome, but unfortunately, as far as DC is concerned, it never happened. Or at least or it's really weird because like the rebirth stuff and the changing of all the timelines, it's not always clear what they think happened and what they didn't. Some stuff in New 52 got stuck around, so maybe that one moment. But either way,
I just read as it's coming out. I'm like, this is happening now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You have to live in the present. But the point is that like when we get to rebirth, here's the very important thing, and the reason I want to mention this is that instead of Barbara Ann Minerva being the sort of distant and evil like antiquities collector and archaeologist, it turns out she's going to be one of Diana's best friends when she comes here. Now, in the Perez run, what was interesting was there's this character named Julia Capitellis. And Julia Capitellis was a anthropologist or a classicist, a philologist, that kind of stuff. She's the one that teaches Diana how to speak English, because that's also cool. When Diana first comes to Mansworld, she speaks some ancient Greek dialect nobody's heard of. So this classics major teaches her. Well, in the New 52, when Rucka kind of relaunches the whole thing, instead of that character,
you mean Rebirth?
Sorry, Rebirth. Thank you. Instead of Julia Capitellis, he writes her out of it and puts Barbara Ann Minerva as that character. So the first sort of collegiate character that teaches Wonder Woman, teaches her English and all that kind of stuff, is the person who will later be Cheetah. And as a matter of fact, and in this on Cheetah, the more I think about it, I love how interconnected their stories are.
Yep.
So imagine you're Barbara Ann Minerva. She's an archaeologist this is when she was still good. You'll like her. When she has studied mythology her entire life, especially the kind of like feminist trend that existed in the Greek world. And then Wonder Woman comes out of nowhere and you're like, it's all real. So then Barbara Ann Minerva starts going around the globe looking for more signs of gods in the real world. Unfortunately, she finds out about Carthaga and she's cursed with Cheetah, and it turns out because she's not a virgin, that's the idea that it's great, horribly painful, and she becomes more monstrous and stuff like that.
Yeah, she becomes more bloodthirsty. Like she has to kill people to like stop the pain of the cheetah venom, you will.
And in classic sort of villain hero dynamic, because Wonder Woman, I think she was supposed to in some ways like intervene on the trip or come help her.
She was supposed to. She had the what do you want to call it, like a communicator,
stopwatch.
Wonder Woman, like to be like, I need help, or like because Wonder Woman was off doing her own thing,
like the old Jimmy Olsen like watch to call Superman. Yeah, and it's like, you were supposed to help me. It's like, yeah, I was trying to save the world. Thanks a lot. So anyway, so because she didn't prevent her from becoming the Cheetah, she's always had a grudge against Wonder Woman. And this is very tragic tale of this sad lady who's also ferocious. Greg Rucka's Cheetah is awesome just because it has such a wonderful combo of that tragedy, and she's terrifying.
That's why I love her so much. That's why I love Cheetah, and Greg Rucka's Cheetah made me love her even more because the connection. I love a tragic villain. I love one that's so connected to the hero that it's like they could team up if they need to, but most of the time they're trying to kill each other. So that's Cheetah. We talked about her. Listen to the second episode for me to talk about her for like an hour. But in typical deep dive fashion, particularly ones with movies coming out, we like to give you a little background on all the villains that are going to be in that movie that we know of. And so wanted to talk about Maxwell Lord. He's not classically one of her villains, but he is a Justice League of America, Justice League International villain. But I'll talk about one particular story that really cemented their never-ending bond ever since then. So Maxwell Lord, actually born Maxwell Lord the Fourth.
Nice.
Don't forget he's the fourth.
What a prick.
And I love other names of characters, and I have to say him, or the Black King,
Cool.
or Lord Havoc.
Cool.
So as you can see, he likes to have stature. He likes to have status. He likes to be narcissistic. So his first appearance was in Justice League number 1 in 1987. And so he didn't originally have abilities, but ever since this particular run, pretty much post-Crisis, he has the ability to persuade people. So after the Dominators invaded, he gained like a metahuman ability. And so how it started out was he could more suggest it to your subconscious. But it's like you could withstand it. A lot of times people weren't knowing it was happening, so he would get what he wanted. It was just like a telepathic persuasion. But whenever he did use it, his nose would bleed, so it was a really big tell, like, what's wrong with you? type of thing. But in instances, he did master it and become like a huge threat. So now in the current canon, he's a metahuman since birth. So they changed it where he didn't have powers and then he got them to now he's just always had it. And his primary power is tweaked to a more powerful psychic persuasion, which works when he gives a vocal command. So if he's like talking to an audience, he can persuade all of them to do whatever he wants them to do. Power works mostly by exploiting and promoting people's underlying desires and inhibitions to do his bidding. So the only drawback is really he can't outright control them, but he can more push them. Does that make sense?
It's like Kilgrave or Purple Man.
Exactly.
But yeah. But you're right. And he like there's one comic where, and I know you're going to get into this a little bit, where he controlled Superman. But I was just going to say, in that story, it implied that he had to work on him for a long time.
There was actually, to just give another example about his abilities or what he's done, he drew out of Deadshot's subconscious the desire to kill his daughter. So that way he would be free to kill anyone. And he also uses power on Killer Frost and to draw out her desire, which actually flipped because she actually wanted to make a difference. So she became a hero.
Love it.
Yay for Killer Frost. But the biggest instance, and this is, I guess, the most memorable, and if you're going into watching a movie with Maxwell Lord, you have to know about this moment. So during Infinite Crisis, this is where Maxwell Lord dies. But leading up to that, so at the end of a prologue special issue, he shoots and kills Blue Beetle.
Yep.
Fuck him. Everybody still hates that choice. Everybody still hates it. But he does get his just dues. So he used his powers to influence Superman's mind, which Jared was talking about. It was not an easy feat, but he was able to get Superman's mind, which I always feel like Superman always gets mind controlled. Like everybody's like, oh, it's hard to mind control him, but it's like Poison Ivy's doing it. Dr. Psycho's doing it. Like,
well, at least they have to explain it. So the Poison Ivy thing, they had to use kryptonite to weaken him enough. It's always
kryptonite.
I agree with you. Yeah.
But anyway, so he influenced Superman to beat up Wonder Woman and Batman because he made them believe that they were like his enemies, Brainiac, Doomsday, all of those guys.
Terrifying.
And this is significant because he's never been able to do full-on hallucinations. So this is really when his powers like elevated to a new level. So after Wonder Woman barely escaped Superman, she confronted Lord and bound him with her lasso to tell the truth. And at this time, he was controlling all of the Brother Eye satellites, like OMAC, Brother Eye, and was broadcasting a lot of stuff to try to show that, like, these heroes aren't as great as you think they are. So for Wonder Woman to break this hypnosis over Superman, she tries to get him out of it. They have a huge fight. She does use her tiara, so she does use it as a weapon and as other things. She cuts his neck a little bit. It's one of my favorite
moments of of when she throws her tiara, and because it's magical, it cuts Superman's throat. It doesn't kill him, but it like cuts him enough to like just hurt him.
Yeah,
it's an image. Like it's a striking image. Like Superman's neck gets cut. Oh my god! But then she goes back to Lord, and she's using lasso, and she's tell me how to stop this. I need this to stop. And He tells her the only way to stop this is if you kill me. So she's like, okay. And just twists his head around. She snaps his neck on live TV. Mm-hmm. Broadcasted around the world. The image is super iconic. If there's an iconic image with her, this would be one of them at the top, with her snapping his neck, because it's such a jarring image that she would kill somebody so brutally that she didn't need to kill like that.
Well, they put it in question in a really big way, but I mean, I sort of agree with her decision to do it.
I think it's fine. If she can go murder other people, she can murder him too. He killed Ted Cord.
It was just timing. That was bad.
Yes. But he made Superman believe that he was fighting Doomsday.
Right.
And so that fight is awesome too, because like she really does keep pace with Superman, but he thinks Doomsday has just killed his Lois Lane. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's actually predates that Injustice thing.
I was going to, that's a big influence with Injustice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting full circle here. So, I mean, those are really the key points that you need to know for Wonder Woman going into seeing her movie if you don't know about her. And that's right. Why we touched on Maxwell Lord a little bit. That way you get to know a little bit about his background. He has had various other things, but he's more of like a warlord type. He's okay. But I think Pedro Pascal is going to do a really good job with the character in the movie.
He always does.
Mm-hmm.
He always does. That man.
And if they do more movies, they've got plenty more characters to go with. Because
like honestly, actually do Ares.
Let's see some Medusa happen.
Cersei would be fantastic. I would love to see a Giganta appearance or a Silver Banshee appearance. Mm-hmm. So there's even though that these are like some of the major villains, she's got a bunch of stuff. Like she's got a surprisingly good rogues gallery.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have a quick question. Like, what are you guys most excited about for the Wonder Woman movie, except that we're actually going to be able to watch it?
You know what's weird? I'm most excited about the soundtrack because I feel like in terms of DC, she has the best music. Mm-hmm. I'm most worried about this whole Steve Trevor thing. I'm really scared, but I want the music to be phenomenal, and I think it's going to be, which is such a weird thing to say. I'm super excited about, but
okay, just briefly, I'll say this: I only now allowed myself to want that this is good because it's getting decent reviews early on, so at least it looks like it could be. I'm going to call it right now. The third act of this one is going to kick ass. Only because people always talk about the third act of the first movie, and I know that they've heard that, and I know they're like, that shit's not happening again.
Yeah.
I think it's going to crush it this time. I will say I also hope that that Cheetah looks good, because I don't want it to look like her, like Wonder Woman's fighting the movie Cats.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a weird feeling about that. Like, it's like, what else are they supposed to do? Like, I mean, they can do it, but it's like, there's so much movement and stuff that it's like, I think it's going to look weird either way.
Yeah, you're saying like, you got to allow a little bit of latitude.
Bit of cartoony comic stuff happens.
Yeah.
You know, on this podcast, we talked about this. That's not really the thing we hate the most in the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like
we know what we're watching. Like we know the medium.
Exactly.
Like we have to like just be like okay with it a little bit.
I'm starting to think that Kristen Wiig isn't even a werecat. I think some of this is movie magic.
Yeah, I'm super excited to figure out what the hell is going on. I want to know how Maxwell Lord is involved with Cheetah and why Steve Trevor is back. I feel like none of it's real, but that's just me.
You think they're gonna pull "It was all a dream"?
Well, he can persuade people. He can make people see things.
That makes
and
me sad.
Also, there was that rock, and I feel like it's the wishing meteorite. I have said this many times, but I'm like, I feel like that amplifies his powers. We'll see. If
it turns out that he makes that Steve Trevor didn't really come back, that's going to be more.
It would explain why she went away, like into hiding, because that broke her.
This would make a lot of sense. Right. And that it almost scares me because it's the only thing that's going to make people hate Max more than shooting Ted Cord in the face.
Imagine that's the thing that they just bring Blue Beetle in for a cameo, but he gets shot in the face.
Oh my god! If she does that and then Diana breaks his neck in this movie, I'm gonna cheer.
Yeah.
And the thing, oh my god!
But it would just be funny. Everybody's like, "Who was the blue guy?"
Let's change it. We want Diana to break someone's neck in this movie. That's what we're most excited about.
I mean, only Max Lord.
It would be a good fuck you to all those people that hated Superman snapping General Zod's neck, because people would cheer for this one.
Yeah.
But they didn't cheer for that one. Okay, so anyway, reading recommendations. We're obviously super excited about this movie. I can't wait to see it. I guess I'll go since I'm talking already.
Good.
So I'll recommend, I could recommend any of Greg Rucka's run for Wonder Woman, but I'll specifically, because it is easy to find, and I think it's a good introduction to modern Wonder Woman, is reading the 2016 The Lies. It was the start of Rebirth with Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. I will give you a forewarning. There's 2 parallel stories happening at the same time. There's The Lies, and then there's Year One. So you get to see the origin while also seeing current. And let me tell you, there are some crazy twists in that one that I loved. So, Greg Rucka, The Lies, Wonder Woman.
It's fantastic. And my recommendation, I'm going to go with Wonder Woman by George Perez, Volume 1. Look, guys, it's a bit dated, but I honestly believe George Perez is the sort of bridge between it's sort of modern and the current era. It's fantastic.
He gave her hair. The hair.
No, the art's great.
Yeah.
And George Perez still works, and he does fantastic work. And I'll say this, not only did this get the big sort of thumbs up for like kind of infusing it with beautiful mythology, it's also a great double down on the feminist notions that really got like, it's sort of like, what's the word? Like,
he went back to the roots.
It cashes the feminist check that was written with the original.
Yeah.
It's fantastic stuff. No question. I think it very much works.
This was hard to choose a recommendation, actually, because there's a bunch of like random stories for Wonder Woman that I like. There's a whole story where she was blind, and I almost chose that one.
She has really good. That's a good point. She has good like one-offs. Like,
yeah.
Or like big. Yeah.
In terms of, I ended up choosing Wonder Woman: The Circle. It came out in 2008, so right before New 52. It was written by Gail Simone, and it was Gail Simone's first run with Wonder Woman. I think she'd written her in like Justice League, but this was her first, I'm taking over Wonder Woman title. Illustration was by Terry Dodson. The art's really pretty, but I chose it because I feel like Gail Simone does like the characterization for Diana so well. So I feel like reading Gail Simone's Wonder Woman, it touches on the best parts of Diana Prince and the Princess of Themyscira.
I agree. I love that one. She just recently came out with an omnibus, Gail Simone's like Wonder Woman omnibus.
Yeah.
I want it so bad. I don't care that it's like 6 inches thick.
Huge.
I want it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's Wonder Woman. That's a wrap on this deep dive. It's probably one of our longer ones.
That's as much as Wonder Woman that we could do in an hour and a half. So.
And we're going to deep dive her again. No, I'm just kidding.
We could.
The third movie.
No, I mean, we're definitely going to be talking about the movie later on. So get more Wonder Woman there. Bye, guys.
Boy. Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at The Phantom Zone Pod for more podcast updates.